Good morning. It's Saturday morning. Saturday is a special day, and that can only mean one thing, and that thing is that it's time for Special Day Morning. Hi, I'm Laz, your host. Special Day Morning is a variety type internet talk show focusing on the people of Utah, Mormonism, which includes the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the broader spectrum of spiritual practices that emerged from it. And the show is pretty freeform, but we're starting to figure it out. I'm starting to think that maybe the narrative of the show, the thing I need right now, is to talk with some guests in the middle of this pandemic. Feel like I'm engaging in social behavior, having good conversations, and hopefully these guests can help me figure out what I'm even doing. Trying to be honest, I'm a pretty private person, if you couldn't guess by the fact that I'm mostly anonymous. But I do have a lot of very real triumphs and concerns in my life, and I'm okay with sharing that. Because maybe there is someone out there who is going through something similar, and hearing it will be good. I don't know. But my guest today is Camilla Stark, and I am recording this intro, in fact, after we recorded our episode together, and I think it's really good, and I'm really excited to share it with you. Just wanted to do a proper intro with the little theme, and I'm still figuring out all this equipment. I thought I'd be able to have some sort of soundboard that would let me play things live as we all listened. Didn't really work out that way, so this is going to be cleaner, even though it is still messy. So, pretty soon, you're going to hear the beginning of our conversation. We're just going to chatter, warm up, get into things. Fair warning, I do continue to ramble, and I assume if you've made it this far, meaning the test pilot episode and, the last couple minutes of this intro, you are accustomed to that, and for that, I salute you, and I cannot thank you enough for being patient. If you don't like a little bit of rambling, tangents, circling back around and talking about things you've already probably heard about, just skip about 10 minutes in. That's when we start discussing this article, which I will link in the show notes. And that's about all there is to say. Thank you for listening to this, our first episode. And make sure you tune in later tonight around 8 p.m. Mountain Time for the special day After Dark episode featuring the Bishop of the Cult of Cthulhu of the End Time Awakening, Nels Pipper. So without further ado, here's the interview with Camilla Stark. Thank you. How's it going?
Oh, not bad. How are you?
I'm good. I'm just... I gotta take one ear off of this headphone because it's playing my own voice at a slight
Yes,
delay.
that's why I can't.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
I can't wear the headphones.
But it should be fine. I mean, we're not experts, and if we were recording for Hivecast, I would be attempting to do what Michael, our producer, says, which is to split the two audio lines into left and right so that you can work with both of them.
Oh, are you not doing that for this one?
No, I tried to do it, and the one, if I pan to the right, it just didn't record.
Oh.
I don't know why.
That's how it goes.
Yeah, this is fine. This is an amateur production.
Yeah.
The hardest thing that I have been dealing with thinking about all this is just how to speak normally over microphones when you know you're being recorded. And I don't know. I feel like self-conscious about it right now because you think about the recording. It's not natural.
It's not. Yeah, but I think that once we get chatting, we'll hopefully feel more normal.
Hopefully. I think it just comes with time, right?
Yeah. And this is what, episode 1 of
episode 1
of Special Day Morning?
Yeah, with a person and not just talking to myself in a room. And also, I feel like with the quarantine, pandemic, and just my general social state for years before that, my experience just talking to people in general is limited. I feel like I've been in my own brain for like a decade, apart from knowing. I think we'll just bleep out confidential information if there is such a thing. But here we are. We're finally doing this thing that has no form, although I have some ideas and I did take notes.
Okay, so it has form.
Has some form. Yeah, so like I said, I think I'm just going to have, for anyone listening, you've already heard me give an intro to this episode, so we don't really need to lead into it. But this is Special Day Morning, the only podcast on the internet. I like saying that things are the only thing online. Like my website is LAZERos.net, the only website online. Yeah, most of my notes are for the end, like housekeeping stuff. So, what have you been up to?
Well, first, do you want me to like introduce myself?
Yes,
okay.
That's actually very good. Maybe I should introduce you if I haven't already. Doing the post solo intro recording. I am here today in quote unquote the studio with my good friend Camilla Stark.
Hello.
And yeah, why don't you give yourself a little background intro?
I mean, I don't know. You know me. People on the internet might know me. I'm just a girl who's kind of weird, but happy about it. I do art, and sometimes I have an alter ego of being an apocalyptic desert prophet.
Yes. And I think that we're going to get into the apocalypse.
Yeah. We sure are.
Yeah. I don't know if these episodes will have like themes. I was kind of thinking about picking a theme based on what you had me read, or maybe in future episodes. I don't know. But I think the end of the world.
Yeah, no, I mean, especially because like your guest for tonight is going to be the Bishop of the Cult of Cthulhu, right?
Yes, I'm very excited to have him come by. And you're staying for that.
Oh, am I?
If you'd like to be.
Okay. The way you said you're staying for that kind of made it sound like you're keeping me hostage.
Oh no, not at all. But it's an open invitation.
Okay.
If you would like to stick around, he'll be coming by. I don't have a lot of information.
Okay.
But I'm very excited for that.
Okay.
And that is like I mentioned in the pilot episodes, After Dark is the evening portion of the show. It releases as a separate episode just to do a little housekeeping. So if this is somehow the first thing you're listening to, then make sure you stick around for another episode dropping tonight.
Sweet.
So what were we saying? The end of the world. The end of the world.
The end of the world.
Yes.
Should I tell them about the article I sent you?
Yeah. A little preface.
I've always said preface.
Yeah, that's what I went to first, but I don't know if I've ever said it out loud.
Oh, yeah?
But I'm sure I've heard it.
I'm sure.
This is great.
This is quality content.
Great radio.
Yeah, your fans are like weeping with joy right now.
Before I get to the preface to the thing that you were leading into, I just remembered, this is all chopped up. What I was going to say is that it's true that people probably know you, because I'm sure that most people listening to this know me through you, or came to this episode because of you.
I mean, that's a toss up at this point. You're like pretty popular on the internet these days.
I don't know.
You've got quite a following.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, like it's all small potatoes or
Right.
whatever, but you've got like pretty much 1,000 followers on Instagram and Twitter, and to me, that's a lot.
Yeah, yeah, okay, I'll take it. This is weird. And I'm listening to my own voice in my ear, and that's making it extra weird. But like we were saying at the beginning, I just really want to have like honest conversations and stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, that doesn't have to be like anything revealing or crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But lately I've just been feeling kind of like, I'm sure this will tie into the topic, which I haven't forgotten. I have a preface to get to.
Okay.
I'm sure this will tie in. But lately I've been thinking a lot about like, what's the point? A little bit nihilistic, not in like a totally depressed negative way, but just in a way where we and anyone who has listened to like the Hivecast or has followed the archive, we are all about really embracing our niches and these little crowds and these people that are so kind to give us any kind of support or attention. And lately that's kind of what I'm running up against, which is my ego that has no end to hunger is just making me feel like, well, yeah, I've got 1,000 followers. I should launch a podcast or I should like do more streaming or something so that more people can pay attention to me. And that's like my own ego thing. But that's why I'm kind of feeling a little bit like aimless lately, because it's like, how far can a niche go before it plateaus?
Only one way to find out.
Yes.
Push the niche to the limits or die trying.
Okay. I feel like this is all going to tie in nicely. So the preface, you mentioned an article. We're bringing it all back around.
We're bringing it all back. The big conclusion.
The big conclusion to the giant loop with no more tangents, I swear, is that I mentioned in the pilot that I want to do kind of a media swap, is what I called it. In practice, it ended up being more of a guest bringing me a piece of media and me not really knowing what to share back. But I think this is going to be better. We'll play with both. But for the sake of this first episode, keep it simple, focus on this one thing. And I kind of feel like there could be an interesting angle from all this, which is me in my aimlessness lately, not knowing everything I believe, am gladly taking with open arms all sorts of bits of truth that people want to bring to me that we can talk about and consider.
Nice.
So you brought an article today.
Yeah. So I brought an article from a website called The Outline, where they would post like think pieces. And it had the most interesting like graphic design visuals I've ever seen on the web, like the most effective, honestly. The Outline, I am devastated to have recently learned, got shut down because of COVID.
No.
I know. I mean, it's a freaking online website, but what does that have to do with COVID? But, whatever. It's still up. So I'm going to keep sharing this article while I can. But it's an article from 2017 called "The Aztecs Foresaw the End of the World, but then it didn't happen." And it's by an author named Sam Criss. And I mean, do you want me to like talk about the basic premise, or like,
yeah,
should we launch into impressions, or what do you want to?
Why don't you do a quick summary? Because
Yeah.
I feel like I've been talking a lot. And we'll go from there.
Sure. First of all, you guys should look up this article. I find it very compelling. But it's about how it starts with talking about how the world was supposed to end in 2012 with the whole Mayan calendar prophecy thing. You all remember that, and how that wasn't the first doomsday prediction. And then it goes on to talk about how the Aztecs had a really interesting end of the world myth belief, because in their version, the end of the world had actually already happened and that we're living in a dead world. It was like cobbled together from the remains of 4 previous worlds. And in each of those 4 previous worlds, the gods had like remade the human race anew, but now we're just basically, yeah, a dead world. We're made of the bones of those who came before, and the sun is a dead god. The sun is a dead sun, and that's why they had to perform the human sacrifices in order to keep the sun rising every day. And then it goes on to talk about how the like when the Spaniards came and well, no, let me back up a little. It talks about, how it's this interesting contradiction between the Aztecs lived in this beautiful garden city, and just like had like a really rich culture, but also killed thousands of people every year to keep the sun from rising. And then when the Spaniards came, the empire went from 25 million people to 1 million. And it kind of talks about, oh well, it's like you were so silly, you thought the sun would stop rising if you stopped performing these sacrifices, but look, you stopped performing them and the sun's still there. But the world did end for the Aztecs. Like their world was over, even though this for the Spaniards and for other people the world was still going. Their world was over. And then it ties the whole thing into the modern day, and about how you can sit around waiting for signs of the end times, but maybe they're already here. Like the oceans are boiling and the sky is turning dark with pollution, and there is a very annoying sound of a trump always sounding off, and it talks about capitalism and how the sacrifice is still human lives for the sake of the powerful and wealthy, but it just looks like a 9 to 5, or in many cases multiple minimum wage jobs to barely try to make ends meet. And what kind of human cost is that? So that's what the article is about. And like there's things about it that I would love to talk about, but I also really want to hear what you got from it.
Yeah. The hollowness of like the gig economy and everything. No, I was really struck by it, especially with just my general mood lately and everything in the world. And I feel like our generation and younger are pretty fed up with a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And even if we're not fed up with let's say, even if some of our generation are pretty on board with the status quo, they're also fed up with, I don't know, or I guess status quo people are always fed up with people who want to take away the status quo.
Yeah.
But everyone's fed up.
Everyone's just, pissed off.
It's like, I mean, I don't think this podcast will be any stranger to conversations about like faith crises and things like that. But the idea of going through the motions like an animated corpse
interesting
is something that I have felt very real, very accurately in regards to my faith crises and these moments where I just wake up, and not even just faith, but like work, being like, I'm just like a shell, which lately has been a little better because I'm kind of doing my own thing, but there's also this dread of like instability hanging over my head.
Yeah, you can't have it all, right? Like either you're a corporate, shell, or you're at risk of your legs being knocked out from under you at any given moment, right?
Yeah, I think that no, the idea that the world is already dead or in the process of dying while we're watching signs for its demise is a really cool one. And it definitely resonates. That article was written in like 2017, but it more now than ever, I think. But yeah, what are your takeaways? Why, I guess when I asked for some kind of media to trade or bring, what drew you to this one?
So I read this article when it first came out a few years ago, and I've been like sending it to people and trying to get people to read it ever since. I don't know how many people actually have, but it just really stuck out to me. It was very compelling to me. I actually, when I reread it earlier today, I completely forgot that there was any economic angle in it, because I was just so taken by like the dead world imagery. It really ties into a couple other similar like media imagery, in particular, in Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which is the movie Blade Runner is based on. Have you read Androids?
I haven't finished it. I have it on Audible.
That's right.
I've started it twice, and it's short, but I always lose track before. I don't think the reader is very engaging. Talk about a android dreaming of electric sheep while recording his audiobook. Hey. That's the joke.
Good joke, Laz. All right.
Thank
you. Yeah, so for me, again, the takeaway from that book wasn't the whole like sci-fi android thing. It was about the religion that they practice in the book.
Yeah.
Which is called Mercerism, and it's predicated on empathy towards other people and towards animals, because and at their point in society, that's the only thing that really differentiates humans from the androids. The androids are smarter and more powerful, but the humans have empathy, and so that's what their religion is kind of based on. And there's this experience they have that it's like the main worship thing in their religion, I think, where they have this thing called an empathy box, where they like hold on to some handles, and it basically puts them in a communal VR experience where they are Wilbur Mercer, the founder of the religion, and he's walking up a big dusty hill, and there's people throwing rocks at him or whatever that you can't see. But when he gets to the top, he falls into this tomb world that has the bones of a bunch of animals down there, and the animals like reanimate and wake up, and like together with the animals, he rises out of the tomb world and then starts walking up the hill again. And like again, like that's always been the most interesting part of that book to me, which I think might be kind of unusual. And then also, like, to me, it ties into the vision of Ezekiel in the Valley of Dry Bones in the Old Testament, which is basically kind of similar, like imagery, situation, scenario. Ezekiel the prophet is in a vision and taken to this valley full of dried bones, and these things have been dead for a long time. And then basically he hears a voice or something that says, like, behold, these bones live, and they all come back together and become people again and like reanimate. And I'm a self-proclaimed goth. I don't know why I had to say self-proclaimed.
Yeah.
I'm a goth.
Yeah.
I accept death. And I like skulls. Anyways, so those have all been very compelling. And like, I don't quite know why. Maybe we could I don't know, talk through that. But like, I want to call out one more thing first, which is an interesting thing that I heard at a lecture in the Springville Art Museum last year. There was an exhibit about the art of death, and one of the lecturers, whose name I'm looking up right now so I can give him a proper shout out, Sam Brown, who's an LDS scholar. He, I think, mentioned sort of obliquely that in Mormonism, theologically, we're already dead. Like, because of the fall of Adam and Eve and the definition of spiritual death being living apart from God, we're already all dead. And that it just really struck me how much that ties into the Aztec and the tomb world and the dried bones.
Yeah.
And I mean, part of me wants to be like, and then through Jesus Christ, we'll all live again. And, just like close the loop like that. But like lately, I mean, it's kind of felt like maybe we should just accept the fact that we're dead,
Yeah.
and just be here dead.
That's a really interesting point. I think that does tie in super well. So I'm sure all of these things have been on your mind.
I mean, they've been on my mind for years. Like, in my notebook, I like draw these mind maps all the time because I just like everything fits together.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just like, I have these thoughts and I read these things and I know they're connected. And then like one day I just like sit down and like sketch out this like big mind map about a topic. And then it kind of like, I don't know what the outcome of that is. I'm just like, yep, everything fits together,
Yeah, I've never done that on paper, but I've often talked about my fascination with symbols and kind of esoteric hermeticism and things, which to me, I mean, speaking outside of a faith-based perspective, speaking from a more anthropological, what do they call that? Behavioral evolution kind of standpoint. The human brain is like the ultimate pattern finding machine.
Yeah.
And so in a way, I've always felt, or for a few years, I've kind of felt onto this thing, which is that finding patterns is kind of the most deep, profound instinct in the human psyche.
Interesting.
If you're looking at it from that kind of evolutionary, behavioral, anthropological point of view, I mean, this whole conversation would be in a completely different place talking about it from like mainstream Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, obviously. But I think that like finding patterns and the reason that like Christ is such a strong and enduring symbol is because like our whole world seems to cycle around the ideas of life and death.
Yeah.
And so having a figure that, and I mean, there have been other mythological figures, but I feel like something about the Christ myth, whether you believe it in the sense of a true believer, or whether you want to kind of step back and analyze it, the Christ myth seems to have really cracked something that has really like endured and penetrated people's psyche. And I think it's something to do with that, the fact that the flowers die, the flowers come back, the world gets cold, it gets warm again. These cycles of like death and resurrection are so omnipresent. It's like the thing that literally they say in the scriptures is like all things testify.
Yeah.
It's that you can make these patterns from anything about this figure.
Well, the thing that's really interesting about that, Laz, is I feel like the way that we live in modern society now is more cut off from those cycles of life and death than it has ever been, right? And we can get fruit any time of the year. When our loved ones die, we have professionals whose job is to make them still look alive when they're in their coffin.
Right.
We have AC and we have heat and we have coats, and like, so we don't quite live through the cycles of nature the way we used to. We have even day and night, right? Like we sit in our houses with the lights on. When's the last time you went outside and looked at the stars, right?
If you even can.
Yeah.
From a city.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're more disconnected from nature than we've ever been. And this was like a big part of my Desert Prophet zine that kind of solidified the character for me. We think that we're like cheating death and cheating the cycles of life and death, but we're not. And it's going to come for us sooner or later. And when it does, it's not going to be happy from being held back for so long.
Yeah. Oh, I think about all the time, like, this is so simple and kind of dumb, but the fact that, like, fruit, like you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
the fact that, like, an orange used to be like a treat at Christmas time
Yeah.
because it was exotic and hard to get that time of year from, if you're living in London or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Or the other food that people used to eat, jams, preserves, like beets in cellars, things that they had to keep through the winter to survive. And I have never really put all these pieces together, so I'm glad we're having this conversation. So it is productive. But just that disconnect from these cycles, and the funeral one too. I mean, I've only had two major close deaths in my family. I'm the older son of an older son. So I have one grandpa who died, and like one great grandma when I was a kid. And I think for a future Hivecast, we want to talk about the funeral industry a little bit.
Let me just tell you, if you're listening to this, you got a sneak preview of the October Hivecast.
Little tease.
The episode's gonna be called "Death Comes for the Archkeeper," which is a play on that book called "Death Comes for the Archbishop" by Willa Cather.
So good.
And we're gonna talk to some people who work in the death industry. It's gonna be dope.
Yeah, but the fact that is, we all know what I'm thinking, but I'm trying to think of the right word. The fact that is like packaged up and sold as like a bundle that we don't have any part in. I think one of the first times we were talking online before we met, we were kind of bonding over the idea of animal sacrifice of all things, or like at least like if you're going to eat meat, the act of killing your own animals.
Yeah.
And we were both kind of into that in a weird,
I
macabre
feel like
way.
you like owe it to the world. Like I killed a fish or two that I've like gone fishing with my family, but it's like, I feel like it's honestly probably morally wrong to just like go to the grocery store and just like buy meat that's so far separated from the animal it came from. And like, I don't know, I have wanted to at some point be a participant in slaughtering an animal for food, raising, slaughtering, whatever. I haven't done it yet. And like, so I am kind of being a hypocrite. I think I'm probably never going to go vegetarian because I'm like gluten-free and corn-free and I'm always hungry and I just really don't know if I could be vegetarian, but it does feel morally wrong to me the way our current relationship with meat is. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're a hypocrite because we all are born into this system.
Yeah.
And, it takes some effort to care for an animal to the point that you're going to slaughter it, or just to take care of even like a pet.
Well, going back to the Android's Dream of Electric Sheep thing, another thing that like I really remember from that is it was like a status symbol, like a social symbol to care for a real animal.
Right.
Because again, like the only thing that separates us from the robots, is empathy. But the fact that like that was such a social symbol was that people would get electric animals and pretend they were real. Anyway, because they were cheaper. Anyway, sorry, I think I interrupted something you were saying.
No, I was just saying that, let's see, shouldn't feel too guilty about it, but that I think anyone who's going to eat meat, or even for that matter, like have fruit any time of year, should kind of go through the experience at least once to some degree, because I was caught off guard. I mean, I grew up in South Central Utah, on a ranch, although my family, they weren't ranchers or farmers. It was kind of an extended family owned the land and people worked on it, and some of my uncles did it more than others. It's a whole thing. But I was like around that atmosphere.
Yeah.
Like you've visited that area with me and met like my aunt who talked about like, oh, there's a wild cat problem. Like they're just more the way we would think of a mouse or something. It's like a pest to be dealt with. And so where I'm getting with this is that I grew up all around that. I'm desensitized to certain things. Like I would never kill a cat or a dog. But in some degree, when I hear people talk about their pets, and I've had pets and I love them, but there's some degree that is a little bit disconnected for me.
What do you mean?
Just in terms of my sensitivity about the death of animals.
Oh, yeah.
I know it'd be different if I had a dog I loved for like 10 years.
That you like grew up with or something.
Yeah, but my wife we both had pet cats when we were living down there. The one that she picked out more kind of disappeared overnight and probably got eaten by an owl or something.
Oh, wait, owls can eat cats?
Big ones can scoop them up, I guess. That's what I've heard.
Frick.
Or could have been a coyote or something.
Yeah, that's what I would have guessed.
But anyway, I was like, I was kind of definitely bummed about it, but I wasn't emotionally affected. But all that's to say that I have even been caught off guard when I went fishing like 2 years ago and actually had to kill a fish for the first time since I was like 11 or 12 as a Boy Scout.
Yeah.
And I was alarmed how difficult it was.
Interesting.
But I think we'll take a quick break and then we'll kind of start to move on to some other parts of the discussion and wrap up. I don't know how long we've been going, but we'll take a break to hear from our sponsor.
That we have a sponsor?
No.
Oh.
But we do now because I'll make something up later.
Okay.
And then I can save and make sure we don't lose all this recording.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
What's up, nerds? Hey, are you sick and tired of listening to a nerd podcast? Oh, I've got a new one for you. It's called Blammo! Brought to you by Jack's Pacific. Blammo's the only podcast out there for cool people. I'm not talking about nerds like you who are listening to a stupid podcast where friends are trying to have intellectual conversations but just stutter a lot. This is Blammo we're talking about, baby. And Blammo means one thing. B means big. L means loud. And ammo means ammo. Blammo's the only talk show brought to you by Jack's Pacific. If you are looking for a show that's way better than this one, well, I took up this sponsorship opportunity just to get on this show and tell you you're a loser for listening to this stupid show. The owner should have thought better, and he should get out of here. Yeah, that's right, I know I'm dunking all over it, but guess what? I gave Special Day Morning $30 for this ad spot, so I'm gonna use it. Blammo!
Subscribe to Blammo on all podcast platforms, a subsidiary of Jack's Pacific Inc. All rights reserved, 2020.
Okay, we're back.
We're back.
And
back in action?
Back in action. Looney Tunes.
Better than ever?
Looney Tunes 2. Back in action. Isn't that a movie?
I don't know.
I don't know. I never saw it. If it is a movie. We were just talking about the end of the world, empathy, the apocalypse, living in a
dead world,
hellish corpse world.
Man, this really could have been more uplifting, I guess.
I think we can bring it there.
Okay.
Oh, but most recently we were talking about the whole disconnect that we're all participating in, whether we want to or not.
Between ourselves and the natural way of things.
Yeah.
Actually, part of me wonders that if that's part of why religion feels irrelevant in the 21st century. And it is irrelevant for a lot of people. Because we're so disconnected from the natural cycles of life and death. And that's, and we have science to explain how our world works and everything. And I feel like those are pretty much two of the main things that religion provides is a sense of senseness, the opposite of senselessness, whatever that is,
Right.
about why bad things happen. And I don't know.
What does religion look like on the path we're on if we continue to be disconnected from the cycles of nature? Do we turn religion on its head to meet that, where we use religion to commune with these cycles that we normally don't see, or what happens?
Yeah, I think that's, one possibility is we our bodies and our minds were evolutionarily like built on those cycles of life and death. And so I'm sure that at a very core level, that's something we need to engage with. And so, yeah, I can see religion being a way to engage with that in a very safe way, right? Kind of like how horror movies and amusement parks are a safe way to engage with the possibility of death. And we find that, very interesting. I also think, again, in the Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep book, about how their religion is about empathy for other people, and for animals and for life. In their case, they were in a world that was also pretty much dead, with like nuclear fallout. Humans found it hard to survive. Very few animals survived. And so I wonder what other human needs like come to the surface when other needs are met, right? I read a book a couple years ago called The Lonely City by Olivia Lang. And it's about the experience of urban loneliness in visual art. But it was a super interesting book, super great. I really recommend it. But I found it so interesting and so sad how we live in cities with so many people, but we're lonelier than ever. Like we're drowning in a sea of missed connections.
Yeah.
And loneliness is we're pack animals, right? But again, like we live in a society that puts us in individual boxes where we live in our giant building of boxes and don't talk to other people.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the virus going on right now, it's like making it all that worse.
Yeah.
You reminded me once that early on when we met and we wanted to make the archive, that something I said, which I don't remember, but I believe because it's very on point for me, is that I just really wanted community.
Yeah.
And that at the time I was like living in the desert. But even before that, living in Salt Lake, I had kind of disconnected myself from a lot of social activity over just, it wasn't any one thing. It's just like, you get busy. I'm married, so obviously I'm always with someone, but you start to lose these connections. And it's really sad. And lately, with everything being shut down, like I'm lucky enough to see a few friends that I've kind of touched bases with through the whole thing. And we, have our own guidelines about meeting up, and we're all very tuned into each other's families and circles and concerns and tests and all that. But like, I feel like even without this pandemic, it's been really hard to interface with people in the world. And like, you go on a place like Twitter and it's like, how do I feel empathy for Joe Schmo who's saying like the dumbest thing I've ever heard? And it's like, usually I just turn it off. I don't even try, because I'm not going to try to fight, and I'm not going to try to like care, because it's just a username. But it's not just, unless it's a bot.
Well, yeah. Okay. But hey, do bots dream of electric empathy?
I hope they do. Do bots dream of the collapse of the United States.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm kind of in tangent ramble mode. We're on topic, but I
Everything's
don't
on topic
remember.
on this cast.
Yeah, this is the only podcast where everything's on topic.
Wow. I'm gonna just applaud that.
Where were we?
Well, something else I wanted to talk about from the article, if it's cool with you.
By all means.
Yeah, it was just the really compelling juxtaposition between the Aztecs living in this beautiful garden city, full of flowers and butterflies and hummingbirds, and young people who would dance all night long, as it describes in the article, and then the priest on the temple steps, cutting someone's heart out so the sun will rise.
Mm-hmm.
And just that, that juxtaposition between beauty and terror has for several years now kind of been one of my core aesthetic explorations.
Mm-hmm.
If you've seen my art, it has a lot of skulls and a lot of flowers. And one, they just look super dope together. But two, to me, it just like speaks about this life and death, how they need each other, and it's like two sides of the same coin. And I don't really know. I mean, I don't have conclusions to that sentence because I'm still exploring the concept.
Right. I think there's got to be something to the way we have this kind of duality in symbolism, but we have a bias towards one side.
Interesting.
And this is something like, I know that the whole duology symbolism, night, day, man, woman, is kind of coming out of vogue because we know there's nuance in the world. But I still really appreciate it for its symbolic worth.
Yeah.
And this is something that I think the guest next week will be Madison Daniels.
Oh, yeah.
If everything goes according to plan. And this is something that he kind of helped me tune into, which is that I'm like, well, there's life and death, but obviously we like life more. There's day and night, but obviously day is the good one. And he kind of, we've had a lot of interesting discussions online.
Yeah.
But he helped me kind of see like chaos isn't the enemy. It's just another thing. So maybe in this exploration of yours, it's all about acknowledging the quote unquote bad thing as just another thing that's necessary.
Yeah.
And there's a give and take between the two. And maybe if we all raised our own chickens and killed them, if we're going to eat them, and we all embraced that side, we'd be better off for it.
Maybe. I mean, you never know what the trade-offs are going to be. I used to work for this biology professor named Riley Nelson when I was in school. I wasn't studying biology. He was just a weirdo and I was a weirdo. And so we hung out. But one thing he liked to talk about is unintended consequences. And specifically in terms of like biomes and ecosystems, if you introduce or take away a species, you don't know what domino effects that's going to have because it has extremely complex systems in any ecosystem, right? Yes, I remember now. I almost completely lost my train of thought there. But what you were saying about would we be better off if we all started doing that again, I wonder what the other unintended consequences would be.
Right. We came to where we are now.
Yeah.
For a reason, or at least as the result of some desire that we had within us.
Yeah. Yes. And I think that's the pendulum swing of human society, right? You go too far one way because you see something wrong with the way things are. You go away from it. You see that there's new things wrong with that are caused by your swing, and then you swing back the other direction, or maybe in a third direction, whatever. And you see this through art history, through cultural history, political history, personal histories, I grew up kind of conservative, like most Mormon kids.
Same.
Yeah. And then like got like pretty freaking progressive, but now I'm at a point where I'm like questioning a lot of things I see in progressive circles as well, because I'm like, okay, like your logic could be flawed or taking things too far, and then kind of trying to find I mean, it's the same thing as the archive, like a middle ground that's not being wishy-washy or refusing to stand for something. Like
Yeah.
a third way, like you talk about.
Do you think that it's just a matter of living long enough for the pendulum to settle? Like, you see, there are very angry old people, of course,
Mhm.
and there are very charitable, loving old people, but it seems like you do solidify what your morals are, and you
Yeah.
stick to those after a point, but your demeanor and the way you engage with others seems to mellow out.
Yeah.
I hope. I don't know. Like, I've definitely felt what you're describing politically, but also in terms with like the way I vent my anger at the world. It's a lot
Mhm.
more fiery. Although I always felt like I was like 5 to 10 years behind my peers in like high school when they were kind of like rebellious and angry.
Uh-huh.
I think I grew up around too many old people. So I was like, well, graffiti, I don't know. I mean, that is causing property damage that somebody has to clean up. When all my friends were like, yeah, let's tag stuff. Um, anyway, disregarding all that, I just think that I hope that we all reach that middle point just by the back and forth motions of the thing.
Right. And I think that, just like a real pendulum, if you pick it up and drop it, it'll eventually, the arcs will get smaller and smaller, and eventually it'll settle, at a stable point. And, that makes me think of the temperance card in tarot, about finding that balance. And that's, part of the language of symbols, right? And then also the verse in the Book of Mormon about bridle all your passions, right? And that means keep them, not too far one direction or the other, but in a spot that makes sense. And I think that spot looks different for different people and in different circumstances. And like sometimes you want the pendulum to swing, right? When you like need to make changes, like we are seeing right now with our society, we are being shaken out of complacency and seeing the flaws and the cracks, and which I think is really great that as a society, or at least certain parts of it, we're saying we can do better.
Yeah. I was going to ask that actually. Is the pendulum settling a point of balance we want to be at, or is it complacency? And I guess it could be both to different people. But I think that does tie in nicely to everything we've been talking about, because that stability is, I think, what led us to where we are and this disconnect from nature. Because as tiresome as a lot of the older generations kind of memes and arguments about like, why don't you get off your phone and see the nature? When I was growing up, all we had was a box and we loved it.
Yeah.
As tiresome as some of those things can be, they do have a point, which is kind of like, it's kind of this convenience we've arrived at. And every generation, at least in our current system of civilization, seems to get a little bit more comfortable. And it's like, sometimes I think like, can you really, as mad as we all are at a particular generation subset of the boomers that brought us a lot of the things that we have to deal with now, it's like, can you blame them for inventing Ziploc bags that ended up in the ocean because they used to have to wrap their sandwich in like a newspaper, and now they're like, look at this thing we made. Water doesn't even get out of it. It's like we kind of came to this place, and I'm thinking, tying in with even further back about where we are with these cycles of life and death that we're avoiding, is that we're seeking to live in the eternal summer where the pendulum's not moving. And maybe that's
not possible.
And complacent, detrimental to these cycles.
I mean, about your comment about previous generations just trying to make a more comfortable life, I think that's kind of where compassion and empathy come back in. They weren't, I mean, I think some people are pretty evil and are just trying to like, hoard money and power at other people's expense.
It's just selfishness.
Yeah, but I think for the most part, everyone has just been trying their best to create a good world for themselves and their children. And yeah, there's always going to be unintended consequences of that. But again, I think compassion and empathy is the proper response to that, as hard as it can be.
And I think that we do, like you said, and I said, growing up kind of more conservative and coming around on some things. We both have probably experienced that initial gut punch of learning about something we don't want to know about, growing up in a society that has divorced itself from consequences. You learn about these things and your initial reaction is like, that's not true.
Or I can escape that.
Or I can escape it.
Yeah.
Because like talking about Ziplocs as an example again, growing up in the 90s, the narrative that was given to me by commercials, TV, and even my parents, whether it was intended or not, is that we can live in a world where we put our sandwich in a Ziploc and we just throw the Ziploc away. And that's just how the world, it gets taken somewhere else. It's taken care of. And then at a certain point, you have to face the fact that like, we have consequences.
It has to go somewhere.
It has to go somewhere. And now I am like a plastic bag hoarder because I feel so guilty.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. But it's also like, I have to figure out how to deal with that on a personal.
Absolutely.
Because otherwise my house will fill with plastic bags.
Right. You don't want to become a hoarder.
Still have to go somewhere.
Yes. Yeah. If something is made, it has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And I could launch into a whole thing about reusable, blah, blah, blah. You'll probably talk, to Madison about that sort of thing. But like, I'm really interested in the consequences thing. Again, that was kind of what my Desert Prophet thing was about, was like, anticipating these consequences that I know are coming, because we already see it starting. The world's already dead, as the world's already ending, as we said earlier. And then it just really felt for me very like, then what's the point? I just feel like
same
things are unstoppable and there's nothing you can do about it, and feeling very helpless. And like, especially for environmental stuff, because I've known a lot about this for almost 10 years now. That was part of my like progressive awakening. Was I took an environmental science class in high school and I totally didn't believe in global warming, and I argued with my teacher like the whole year, and then at the end I was like, science checks out, I'm in. And then after that I became like super like environmental girl or whatever. But anyway, so like trying to deal with this feeling of powerlessness and the fact that like I still have the whole like I want to save the world thing in me that I think a lot of people have. That's why I started writing my graphic novel, which is sadly on hiatus right now because I just can't find the time to work on it. But I don't want to tell you guys, what happens too much, but it's about like the Desert Prophet telling everyone, hey, the world's going to end if you don't do something, and no one listening.
Yeah.
And how the Desert Prophet deals with that. And then like I learned how to deal with it through writing the graphic novel.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's wild. And I wish I could tell you my conclusion, but I can't yet.
And I have read it, at least your first draft.
Yeah.
And I will say I really did love the ending. And that even lately, as like a borderline misanthrope who doesn't want to open himself to emotional experiences, it was very touching. And I really like the conclusion.
Aw, thanks.
I'm glad that we kind of naturally got here, because I was going to ask about, about Desert Prophet and your graphic novel and environment.
Yeah.
But we've kind of come here. Because that's a big thing for you.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you're talking about a world that's already dead and these cycles of nature, that is just a piece of the puzzle. Is like, we're all living in it now. What can we do?
Yeah.
Should we even care? Because are we too far gone? I really liked it. I can't wait for it to come out. But I know these things take time.
Yeah. I was
and the
hoping to get it
world
done by the
is
end of this
crazy.
year, but yeah, I don't know if that's going to happen.
Yeah, well,
We'll
no one
see.
can blame you.
Yeah.
I mean, I have wanted to do some form of a podcast for like 4 years, and I'm finally
And now
doing
you're
something.
doing it!
Yeah.
Yay!
And it's like all these ideas that we have. I don't know.
We're doing them.
We're doing them.
Little by little.
It's slow but steady.
Is it steady? It's not
It's
steady.
not super steady. It's slow but manic depressive. Or hopefully not literally clinically manic depressive, but that's how I feel sometimes.
Hey!
I think we're about at an hour. So I do have one question.
Yeah.
I kind of thought, and as we all know at this point, this podcast is without form and void. Is that the quote?
Yes, very good.
Void and without form. So all these little segments could change. But I thought that maybe we'd have like a little advice section.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I said earlier, maybe the narrative that's taking shape is like, I feel completely detached and despondent lately. Maybe I can talk to some people that can give me some glimmers of hope and meaning.
Well, I feel like I just gave you more detachment and despondency, so
In a way.
I'm in the bone pit with you, homie.
That's a big part of it. But also, I think just thinking about embracing, I think if we could sum up this whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
it's that we are detached from these cycles,
Mm-hmm.
and that maybe we should try embracing some of them and see what happens.
Yeah.
And that's enough hope for me.
All right.
So thanks for tuning in to Special Day Morning with me, Laz, and my wonderful guest, Camilla.
That's me.
In 2 weeks, if everything goes according to plan, we should be talking to Madison Daniels, who works with Bristlecone Firesides, which is an environmental LDS blog. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on the podcast platform of your choice. We are not on Apple Podcasts yet, but hopefully by the time either this episode drops, that will not be true, or in 2 weeks from now with the next episode. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook. I have a few videos on YouTube. It should be Mormcore on all platforms. Or check out my new under construction website, LAZERos.net. Also, check out our podcast, Hivecast.
Woo! The official podcast of the archive.
The official one.
New episode coming as soon as we can.
Yes, with the Hunchback
of Temple Square.
I also stream sometimes on Twitch. Those are other projects. I've got 1,000. If you have any questions for next time, submit them by DMing me on any of those platforms with just make sure you mention SDM02, Special Day Morning 02, so I can sort it. Or you can fill out the form on my website, lazeros.net, LAZEROS.net. And keep an eye out. I might do a similar episode sponsorship thing to what we are doing for Hivecast. So thanks, and tune in later tonight for Special Day Morning After Dark. Yay!
Yay!
We did our first one!
Woo!
Okay, see ya.